Welcome to Bible Smack. 2 Corinthians 6:15. And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? Alright, so today I'm going to give a little response here. I was asked by a brother in Christ to um, take a look at I believe they're a tektontv apologetics ministry with JP Holding. I'm not unfamiliar with them. I actually did a response to their stuff about 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and kind of interacted with them a little bit. And another guy who's in that ministry, Nick Peters. But basically, I'm going to do a series of videos responding to some of their different stuff because they are what I would classify as moderate Christians, somewhat believers, but also theologically rather liberal. And so for Bible believers, it's kind of hard because some things they're going to be defending are true, and then other things are, not true. um, this is kind of a epidemic with the new evangelical movement. What it basically amounts to is that there were people who would respond to modernism, the secular religion that kind of developed where you had atheism and evolution and biblical criticism all kind of coming together. And basically, a lot of people who were Christian at some point have to deal with the fact that they want to accept, um, a world that is unspiritual, as the atheists and liberal Christians did, or do they want to believe in the faith? And you had a group called the Fundamentalist Movement, which I would probably claim to be, which holds to the fundamentals of the Christian faith, things that cannot be erased. We will not disbelieve, and that we were axiomatic, meaning that we were, polemic, meaning that we were not going to sit down. We were militant for these truths. And then you had the Neo-Orthodox movement, which believed in some Christianity, but ultimately not the whole shebang. And so they would try to, be somewhere in the middle. The evangelical movement tried to be in the middle in the sense of believing that the Bible was inspired and believing that they could try to cross over. They could believe, all these other things and yet still say that they believe the Bible. And ultimately, this group started out with the fundamentalists and then have shifted over. And now I believe that groups like this are really more of the neo-Orthodox type, if you were to classify them. I don't know if they would like that, but that's where it is. So, nevertheless, the first video I'm going to go over, just to kind of show you what's kind of going on, is, and this is where we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're trying to take what truth they have and get all the lies out of it. But this one was Hitler a Christian? And basically, I think that I would agree with them that the answer is no. However, what they're going to do with it, the way they understand Christianity, is going to be different than mine. Because basically what they're going to do is they're going to keep the elephant out of the room. And that historical elephant is Hitler connected not with Christianity, but Hitler connected with Catholicism. And whether or not Catholicism is Christian. So basically, as they go through, the first thing, I'd like to say is that Hitler was a Catholic. Okay, he was baptized as a Roman Catholic. And in the evangelical framework, we typically think about faith alone, So therefore, you're not really Christian until you're a believer. But you have to understand the Catholic definition is not worried about whether or not you have faith. They give you this sacrament regardless of whether you have faith. So basically, that's what they do with the baby. And traditional conservative Catholicism teaches that when you get that sprinkling at any age, you will be born again. And so basically, maybe there's some age accountability with adults, but when we talk about infants, infant baptism, that is the doctrine. And basically, the later years, the contemporary Catholic Church sees salvation as something inclusive, whereas they used to hold to things like purgatory and limbo. I think most of the mainstream has gotten rid of the doctrine of limbo, while conservatives still believe in purgatory. And basically, the whole point of limbo was just to assert exclusive salvation. You know, what do you do with the babies that died before they got baptized? Well, they're in limbo somewhere. And they would have separate graveyards to mark this out, who did not get baptized. So basically, Hitler was considered to be a Roman Catholic. I'm just looking at my notes here. The swastika, which was Hitler's big symbol, he discovered in a Roman Catholic church. Now, it has pagan roots, and you can see it in the ancient Far East, in a lot of the old pagan religions and old pagan temples. It is a common symbol, the swastika is, but basically he did see that within the walls of a Catholic church. And people point out stuff where he was involved with New Age occultic things and stuff. And the problem is that lots of Roman Catholicism does mix those two things up. They do have mysticism, they do have paganism, and you just see that all over the place. Basically, kind of ran into a neighbor who was Catholic and had married a pagan just earlier today. But anyhow, so there's an intermingling with this stuff. And what J.P. Holding does is he goes out and he talks about this idea called positive Catholicism. And it was a really good report. Okay, basically, it was a title it was Positive Christianity is the title they were using. And so when they used that title, it was kind of going through this Nazi Christian ideology. And part of that Nazi Christian ideology was to say that the Old Testament was not really inspired, and also to put Jesus off as an Aryan, okay, that he was not truly Jewish. And, that would be heresy, and most groups view that as heresy. But that is not necessarily a problem within this big umbrella of Catholicism. And I want to point that out. In fact, there are Catholics in Muslim countries that only use the New Testament, and they will not use the Old Testament. So that ideology is still around even within groups of Catholics. Because once again, Catholics are not defined by their faith. They're ruled by their confessions. Okay, but they're not really identified in and of themselves. And now they have these doctrines like separated brethren that you see with the Vatican II. So basically, Hitler was a Roman Catholic. He had lots of things that Holding admits to. In their coins, they put like Catholic churches on the back of them. One big thing to kind of notice is the way of the Holocaust. And the whole Third Reich thing. Third Reich, you think. The Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire. Third Reich. Okay? The Third Reich. That was his new Roman Empire that he was establishing. And basically, when they did the Holocaust was based on the Inquisition. And they hired many monks to help them out with this. Okay, they used the methods of the Inquisition, but they amped them up with modern technology so that they could be more efficient killing machines. Um, but basically, in something else that you might notice is that when Holding goes through the series, he doesn't really critique the Nazis about evolution. Um, Hitler based his philosophy off of Friedrich Nietzsche, which was a hardcore atheist, and that's where they got the phrase "God is dead." Okay, you would have thought that they would have wanted to bring that out there about Hitler, but they didn't touch on that in the series. And basically, Nietzsche also had a book called Antichrist, where he basically says that his philosophy is truly antichrist. It's a total rejection of all Christian philosophy. And basically, why is it that they don't bring this up? Well, you also have the Catholic theologian, if I can remember his name, and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Basically, this guy was a Jesuit priest, and he came up with a whole theistic evolution ideology. And that's what you see there. That's what you see with Hitler. Um, the Another proof talking about that Inquisition was the Ustashi, modern conservatives who are finally talking about a massive genocide that was going on. It slipped my mind. I forgot if it was the Hungarian people or the Armenian people. I know there was an Armenian genocide. But basically, the Ustashi carried out a massive genocide at the same time, and they were all monks. And only now they're called, oh, it was a Nazi group. These are very interconnected things. When the Nazis were escaping Germany after the war with the war crimes, all that stuff, they escaped through the Vatican rat lines. Okay, so you have that stuff. The positive Christianity theme, it's just not that organized. It's like a movement, maybe a sect. I've heard of some KKK Aryan Christian groups, which probably is this religion. Maybe it's carried through by them, their positive Christianity or whatever. But yeah, basically, um, these groups now they also in Holding's right. The doctrines that they're talking about, it's like Gnosticism and stuff. It's just it is not Christian. I agree with that. But basically, this is one factor. It's not the whole religion, and what you have to accept that this is Catholicism. The Spanish, when Hitler died, in the Spanish newspapers, they declared that he was a hero and that he was a strong Christian and he died for the faith. So basically, you're not going to get away from that. But you are going to understand that, like, European terminology of Christian is Catholic. And Catholic is not Christian. You know why? Because the word Christian means you're a follower of Christ. Okay, this is the big deal. You have to follow Christ. And the Roman Catholic Church does not follow Christ. Christ is the head of the church. The Pope is the head of their church. Okay? They do not submit to the authority of the Bible. The Bible is a authority, and they're their own authority, and then they have authority over the Bible through the papacy to interpret it how they want, or to form it how they want. They can translate, they can retranslate, they can use different manuscripts, they can add to the canon, take away from the canon. I mean, it's just, it is a thing that's centered really on the power of man before it's all said and done with. They claim that they have this authority through Peter, but now they elect their bishops to this college of cardinals, which they did not have. They use the title Pontifex Maximus, which was belonging to the pagan Roman emperor. And of course, Constantine became the pagan Roman emperor. He would follow the god Kronos or Sol, whichever one you want to call him. But basically, he was under that pagan authority, and he declared himself to be the head of the church. And Basically, that's what the whole Nicaea thing was, is that he was putting his authority over this group of people. Okay, and so that pagan lordship would go on through Pope Nemesis and go through all that kind of stuff. So basically, they have an authority. They do not follow, the Christ of the Bible. Okay, they alter the Bible, and then they alter their interpretations, and then before you know it, it's not about Jesus' blood that'll save your sins. Okay, it is the church manipulating their Jesus and putting themselves into a priesthood that belongs to Christ. Christ is the priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek, and he made that offering once and for all. Okay, he made the sacrifice and the offering once and for all. It was all taken care of. So it is a different type of Christianity. It's not a Christianity. I should take that back. It's not a Christianity. It is a pagan religion that mimics Christianity, is what it does. Um, Maybe you could go deeper. Maybe you say it's a pagan empire. Okay, and it's the pagan empire that mimics Christianity, but it is not Christian in its nature. It's not Christian in its history. There are even alterations that they do. And someone disagree with me here, but honestly, when you look at the deeper context of their creeds, it's not matching the Bible as much as we would like to think. They believe in a Trinity, but not necessarily the one of the New Testament. So anyhow, basically, we can go over that at a later date. But that is the problem that's going on here. That's the big issue here. The Roman Catholics were anti-Semitic. Okay, you could say that Christianity is not anti-Semitic, but you can't really say that about the Catholics. I mean, the whole concept of the ghetto was the Holy Roman Empire, segregating Jews into these little neighborhoods, these ghettos, to keep them away from the rest of the culture. And the Vatican, in recent years, does not identify the nation of Israel as a sovereign state. Okay, they officially don't, and you find lots of various forms of anti-Semitism within those groups constantly. I mean, just constantly. Especially the more conservative ones. And you think it'd be like, well, the more liberal they are. No, the more conservative ones are constantly blaming the Jews, or going back to this whole they're Christ killers, they're evil, they're this, they're that. So that is part of that nature. And let me give you another example. And this infects and invades evangelicalism. A lot of the new evangelicals, I think it was a book I read once called The Young Evangelicals, Richard Q is some sort of like French name, but basically this book called The Young Evangelicals, they specifically identify themselves as repudiating dispensationalism. They said they don't like it because of its literalism. Evangelicalism is a flawed system that is broken. And it is broken, so it's not ever going to work. It is a sophisticated system. So they wow the young church fundamentalists, and they woo them and draw them away. And basically what they want to do is they want to impose evolution and liberalism, and then they want to take them and get them more in line with Catholic thought. They teach you a Roman Catholic church history, assuming that your beliefs based on the Bible is nothing but an invention, 1600 years later. And so by doing all these things and warping them in with that, they take away the authority of Scripture. And many seminarians in the evangelical ministers and stuff like that, a lot of them get converted over to Catholicism at some point. And then some of them are coadjutors. They help out with that kind of thing. And so I would use that title Romanist at that point. And you see it throughout history, especially in groups like the Anglican Church. I mean, Anglican Church, a lot of them are like, hey, we're Catholic, that's it. Hey, we're about to join in with the Roman Catholicism. They're always toying with the idea. But going back here with this Nazi connection, some of the big evangelical scholarship groups, people like Rudolf Keitel and Gerard Keitel. Rudolf Keitel is the editor of the Biblical Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is the new Hebrew Bible to replace the traditional Masoretic text that was preserved by the Jews. And the Apostle Paul said that they were the ones who were supposed to, preserve it. The Jews are supposed to preserve it. But, he went and found an ancient Russian Jewish manuscript, and he started trying to fiddle with it there. Um, and so, here you have this guy kind of fiddling with it. He's in the context of German higher criticism, and of course, in the social German Nazi atmosphere. It's a real weird way of thinking. Even like, the physicist and Albert Einstein was operating underneath Nazi Germany, but anyhow, Rudolph had a son named Gerard, and Gerard became the leading theologian, the leading Nazi theologian, Gerard Keitel, and basically he wrote a huge treatise, a multi-volume work of a dictionary of New Testament words in the Greek and all that kind of stuff. And many evangelicals use it to this day. And so somebody who is inherent in this, and then you add in that idea that he was talking about that positive Christianity. The positive Christianity theologian has to be, okay, he had to be a positive Christianity theologian, but basically that guy is influencing modern evangelicals with his scholarship. And so their scholarship, okay, is placed in the minds over the Bible, okay, over the Bible in the minds of all these ministers. And this new evangelicalism, which is repudiating dispensationalism, which is pushing replacement theology of various types. Okay, that's what's going on there. That is that Nazi influence that is pushing the scholars that J.P. Holding would push onto you. Okay, not saying that he might have some criticisms of them, but generally the circle that he hangs around with, they're all about this stuff. Okay, they're always pushing books like those two easily, and they would say, "Well, who are you to judge? Who am I to think?" Anyway, so we'll see. We'll go over some other stuff like this in the near future on Bible Smack.